Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in. I'm Zainab Aldaoseri from the University of Arkansas. Today I'm presenting my paper Dialectical Literacy and Language Ideology, Iraqi Arabic as a Cultural Memory. Let me begin with the central claim. In this paper, I write that Arabic illiteracy isn't only about not knowing. It is not only about not knowing how to read or write in standard Arabic. Rather, it reaches into the cultural, oral, and even affective knowledge rooted in dialects. Put simply, Iraqi Arabic isn't a sloppy version of a standard. It is a legitimate literacy. Culturally embedded, emotionally expressive, and historically continuous. This talk shows why that matters, linguistically, historically, and even politically, and what we lose when institutions insist that only modern standard Arabic counts as real literacy. So I will move in 4 steps. The first one is literacy as a cultural practice. That is, it is not just a technical skill. Second, lexical archaeology, tracing words back to Mesopotamia. And third, how ideology and gender rank dialects below the standard. And fourth, what recognizing dialectical literacy lets us do in classrooms, archives, and public life. The first move is conceptual. Following Walter Ong, the paper reminds us that literacy is never neutral. Ong shows us that new literacies restructure consciousness and that many communities live in what he calls oral residue cultures, places where memory, performance, and speech are not leftovers but alternate ways of knowing. So when speakers use Arabic to tell stories or recite proverbs or sing lullabies or curse or grieve or joke, they're doing literate work, just not in the school-sanctioned script. As I put in the paper, what is spoken or written in the dialect becomes a tool for memory and cognition. Dismissing that as incorrect does not alleviate the standard. It erases knowledge, it erases ways of knowing. Sociolinguists help us name the hierarchy that produced this erasure. Rimbasioni shows how diglossia ties standard Arabic to state, school, and sacred authority, an invisible linguistic hierarchy where dialects become marked as wrong or shameful. Yasser Suleiman describes a kind of split where speakers internalize their shame while still living their daily lives in dialect. In my words, the tension is not between equals, it is between a codified, institutionalized language and a lived, effective one. And Iraqi Arabic, I argue, is a language of lullabies, curses, jokes, grief, resistance, and survival. The key point here, if we define literacy as a standard, schooled print culture, we miss how dialects store and transmit knowledge. We also miss how code switching, as Abdelkafi El-Barini shows, strategically negotiates identity rather than signaling deficiency. That conceptual reframing clears space for evidence from the words themselves. My evidence here is what I call lexical archaeology, which is Iraqi Arabic as a living archive. This marks the second move of the paper, where I introduce what I call lexical archaeology, tracing everyday Iraqi words back to Akkadian, Sumerian, and Aramaic, to show cultural continuity across millennia. Here are the few key examples I highlight. The first one is tibn. It is an Akkadian tibnu, which means straw or fodder. The second is qafe. It comes from Akkadian kobo, it means basket. We have tanur, which is an Akkadian tanuru, clay, bread oven. We still use that till this day. Gubba, it means dome or skull. Echoes, mound, or zakurat forms. We have shus, which is failed unripe dates because of the agriculture. We have agar, which is Sumerian and Akkadian. It means farmer because of the cultivation across eras. So in this paper, I sum up the implication. Iraqi Arabic is not how linguists register, but a living record of Mesopotamian memory. When we speak, we activate an archive. Farming, ovens, baskets, domes, material culture fossilized in language. That is literacy, a shared, inherited way of remembering through words in use. Why then did the standard gain a hierarchy? Part of that story is historical. Classic Arabic is the Quraysh dialect, alleviated through the Quran and codified as a universal standard. As I put it, classical Arabic became classical by a religious political codification, and the Quran emphasizes this. Indeed, we have sent it down as an Arabic Quran so that you may understand. The label Fusha, or eloquent, sounds descriptive, but as I note in my paper, it carries a semantic claim to superiority, making dialects appear vulgar by contrast. My point is not to invert the hierarchy by shaming the standard. Instead, I urge a continuum. Neither dialects nor standard Arabic should be viewed as part of a binary, but it should be a continuum of orality and literacy. On this, I argue, Iraqi Arabic is literate in women's stories, what we call Shar Shabi, in chants and slogans, and even in today TikTok skits and YouTube commentary. During the 2019 and 2020 Iraqi protests, dialectical slogans carried the movement. Dialectical slogans carried the movement's effect and demands. That is public literacy, embodied, emotional, and participatory. What brings me to ideology and gender, the forces that keep the dialects off the record. This paper also argues that the standard dialect split is gendered. Drawing on Nilüfer Hariri, I note how standard Arabic is masculinized, linked to the mosque, courtroom, and the state, while dialect is feminized, linked to the home, care, and feeling. In practice, this means dialectical expression is trivialized, even when it is doing heavy epistemic work, grief songs, lullabies, love poetry, political solitary. I write, dialectical Arabic remains feminized and trivialized. Standard Arabic, however, is masculinized. This gender hierarchy renders the emotional, affective work that dialects do. Consider Shar Shabi, which is our dialectical poetry. It is rich, memory-bearing poetry dismissed as folk, while Fusha poetry earns the mantle of the nation. The upshot is what I call violence, epistemological violence, excluding the very genres that preserve memory, ethics, and communal feeling. Performance sharpens that critique. I discussed singer-poets such as Sajda Wed, where dialect, body, and dance transmit knowledge. As the paper notes, in ancient Mesopotamia, poetry was enacted, not simply recited. The continuity between embodied performance then and dialect performance now underlines the claim. Dialect is a literal practice of memory. So what follows if institutions recognize dialectical literacy on its own terms? My implications are the following. For research, the lexical archaeology approach invites us to read words as artifacts. We can map etymological strata and living dialects to trace agriculture, architecture, and domestic technologies across time. This builds a vernacular archive alongside manuscripts. For teaching, it means inviting dialects into the classroom, not just as errors to fix, but as sources. Assignments can ask students to collect proverbs, songs, market terms, or craft vocabulary, and then trace their histories. How did the word travel? What practice does it preserve? That's assessment of knowledge, not accents. For public life, it means hearing protest slogans and viral sketches as literacies, community authored texts that circulate memory, rage, humor, and care. In this paper, I describe these as public literacies, embodied, emotional, and participatory. Taking them seriously reframes what counts as Arabic literature and who counts as its author. Let me close by returning to the thesis in the paper's final assertion. Iraqi Arabic is not a regional variety, but a cultural heirloom that links speakers to their Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and Aramic ancestors. When we alleviate the standard at the dialect's expense, we downgrade memory. When we recenter dialect, we expand literacy beyond the page and into our bodies, kitchens, courtyards, shrines, and streets. So the invitation is simple. Treat dialectical Arabic as an archive, a vessel for cultural memory, and let our methods, syllabi, and institutions reflect the truth. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, if you are watching this, I do have my email here. Feel free to reach me out by email. I'd be happy to share the word list and references mentioned earlier. Thank you so much.